Be careful what you wish for. Just be careful of it. Due to a request, I have decided to take a look at the film Faces of Death. I decided to look into some background about the film, research a little bit about it, read some APA articles and all that good stuff. Did a little bit of education for this one for once, because after watching it, I had no idea how to talk about this film. There's just very little for me to say. I'm not in that type of shtick, so as to say, so I didn't really know how to discuss this, and I didn't want to just trash the film for just being bland, tasteless, or just like aimless and random and disjointed. So I had to look it up. I had to look up some more information about it, look up some more perspectives and points of view that other people had about the film, about why it's persisted this long. Apparently there's a whole genre of these films called the Mondo or whatever. I don't tend to watch any more of these shockumentaries. I don't intend to. Mainly because I just don't really care for documentaries, unless they're like things that actually interest me. For example, the Canon Films Electric Boogaloo. That's a documentary about Canon films. They actually get interviews with a lot of the people, of the surviving OGs of Canon films, and they get archival footage of the founders of Canon films, and anybody who might be dead, they got interviews and archival footage of that. So that's an actual thing I would actually watch and enjoy. There were documentaries about Star Trek that I've watched, documentaries about Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, these documentaries about Metallica, documentaries about all this stuff. That's interesting to me, I'd watch that. But this, I don't think I have that much of an interest in it. In fact, while watching it, during large swaths of it, it felt like I was back in uni watching this for a psych class or something. It felt like an educational thing. I was just sitting there watching some docu and then being expected to write a report about some scientific thingamajiggy about the whys and the hows of people doing these things, and it wasn't my cup of tea, if I were to say it. I wouldn't say I was shocked by any of this content. In fact, I would actually say that the majority of the content in this isn't shocking nowadays. Maybe for 1978 or whenever this film came out, maybe for that time period, I have to keep my mind open for that type of idea. Maybe for that time period, it might have been shocking. Maybe for that time period, the more ignorant you were about all these things, the more shocking it might be to sit through watching all these things. They're like, oh my word, look at that. That's just dreadful, those two poor little slaughterhouses. Oh, that's dreadful, that nasty little coal crash. Oh, it's so... Ooh. Yeah, so maybe for the 70s that might be a little bit of a problem. It might be a little bit shocking there, and they were marketing it for the shocking content, for it being banned in 48 countries, and I don't know if that's true or not. That's what they said. So that probably was just a marketing ploy, banking on viewers being ignorant of actually looking that up. And not like we had access to computers back in the late 70s. Well, we did. Well, rich people did, militaries did, governments did, but the average Joe making what? Joe Schmo making 40 grand a year or something. He don't got a computer in the 70s. He doesn't have one. So he's not going to be able to find out. You might ask Jeff from accounting. Maybe he's got access to his boss's computer. Maybe he can... But no, there's no easy way to confirm those types of things. So back then, when they made these types of bragging rights things, they would spread around the rumor mill, would spread among high schools, among colleges, become some sort of taboo rite of passage, and everybody gets all shivering thinking about it. And even today, I heard about it, people talking about it and all that. I had no interest in watching it. I had no interest in looking at it. I could never even find a copy of it, right? And so the more the reputation of films like these got, the higher your expectations for them became. Like, if the legend of this thing is like this massive, massive thing, you expect it to be that. You expect it to deliver that. So when you finally watch it and you say, well, I've seen better effects in a Friday the 13th film. Oh, I've seen better kills from Tom Savini. Way better kills. Maybe even better effects in an Evil Dead, the first Evil Dead movie. So then you just start to just sit there wondering why you're here. Because you know about all this stuff by now. Especially by the mid-2020s. You know about all this stuff. They teach you about slaughterhouse things in the meat packing industry. We had to read in school, we had to read this book. I forget what it's called, but it really delved into the horrors of the meat packing industry. And the reason they were able to get away with it was because it was in text form. There was no actual visual medium for you to show all the slaughterhouse things. But we read about it. We read about it and we learned about it. So we knew what was happening in the slaughterhouses. We knew what was going on there, and they were really trying to scare you too. Like that book that I read, I can't remember the name of it. It felt like it was really trying to scare you into becoming a vegetarian because of all the horrible things done to animals in the slaughterhouses. And there were other things that we learned about. We learned about all the car crashes and potential deaths about that. When you're going to driving school, you learn about all sorts of car crashes there. And maybe if you watch nature documentaries, we get to see a bunch of animal fights there and a bunch of animal attacks. They don't actually show you the full-on actual attack. Even in this movie, they don't actually show it. For example, there's a sequence of the gator attack. A gator is attacking some dude. And all we get to see is choppy editing and splashes of water, and then we get to see a chewed-up torso float up above the water. And it's like, okay, we don't get to see much of that. You know, if this were like some sort of trashy slasher movie or something with a killer gator or something, they would actually show the gator ripping the arm off. They would actually have an underwater cam showing all of those effects going on. They would actually show the kill sequence, because that's what people came to this slasher B-movie, gator killing movie for. They would actually see that. But this movie doesn't show you any of that. It was just a bunch of low-budget edits of some splashing water, and then we get to see the charred up cock, or the chewed up carcass floating above the water. And the intention was to shock you. The intention was to make you think that you were looking at a real killing scene. Somebody was actually dying on live screen. That was the rumor in the late 70s that this film was trying to do, is like make you think that all of what you were seeing was real. And so a lot of the gore was medical stuff. If you were going into like a medical school or anything like that for forensics, or like funeral homes and all that stuff, there was a sequence of funeral homes, especially the funeral homes of the various sorts of preservative fluids, especially if you had to wait a few days, maybe even a few weeks before the body could be laid to rest, before the body could be shown at the viewing. You had to, depending upon how long you had to wait, you had to drain the body of all the blood and all the fluids. You had to get rid of that. And then you had to put in preservative fluids to make the skin look like there's actually something under the skin, even though nothing's pumping anymore. So you had to make sure nothing was pooling near the bottom, and they dressed the body, and they cleaned it up. Yeah, I have family who work in funeral homes. I knew all about this stuff. So there was a big sequence showing that's harmless. You know, that's not taboo or anything like that. It's just something that niche in the workforce does. It deals with people in morgues, people and all that stuff. They deal with that stuff. Maybe the casual person, if they were ignorant to these types of fields, they would not know how gruesome some of these things would look. But if you were knowledgeable about it, you go like, yeah, I imagine that's how that looks. I imagine that's how that looks. And there are a couple scenes with surgery. And like the very opening scene of the film shows some sort of surgical procedure going on. I think open heart surgery or something. You get to see the pumping muscle in this big gaping open carving cavity that they opened up. You see something pumping. That's probably the heart that they were intending to make it look like the heart. And then right before the title screen shows up, we see a flat line. We hear the flat line, and then the muscle stops moving. So that might have been a heart or something during some open heart surgery. And we get to see some draining of the blood to keep the wound clear, the opening clear of viscous fluids and all that stuff, so they can work on what they're doing and all that stuff. So that might unnerve somebody and make somebody feel a little bit queasy, but it's just a natural procedure that you do when you perform surgery. There's another one where they were cutting open some sort of arm. They were cutting the arm open. This is just some medical stuff, really. It's a bunch of harmless things, and we get to see some natural animal. That might make a few people uncomfortable. Animal cruelty and things like that. Yeah, that might make a few people uncomfortable. We get to see some dog fights in there. We get to see the slaughterhouse, like I said. You get to see gator hunting, otter hunting, and various sorts of hunting, and leaving carcasses strewn in their wake because they're after the furs or after some sort of thing, and they leave the rest of the body alone, and they're after the alligator's skin or whatever, and they leave everything else alone so that they can use the materials to make like boots or whatever. And you get to see the left behind carcasses of all of the animals. So if animal cruelty bothers you, then this movie would bother you. But it's like the film exists to bother you. So maybe there's a niche for that. Films do have all sorts of things. Like Schindler's List, the movie Schindler's List. With Liam Neeson, it shows the Holocaust and does not shy away from showing a lot of the worst things that you could imagine were being done. This film also shows some Holocaust footage. Not a lot of it, maybe about 3 to 5 minutes of footage from the Holocaust, all black and white footage. So that might be actual real footage, by the way. That might actually be real footage. So they were showing some Holocaust things, some Holocaust archival footage, which you can obviously find online if you want to look for it. But yeah, that's obviously uncomfortable, but it's also educational, so you can learn about what these people did, why it was wrong. But the film itself, the Schindler's List, existed. They showed all of those horrible things, and they did not shy away from it. They did not turn the camera away. They did not want to remove the gaze. They did not want you ignorant to what was going on here. They put the camera on the people. They showed you what was happening to the people so that you as a viewer would be uncomfortable. That was the purpose. That was the point of the scene. It wasn't to glorify the violence. It wasn't to glorify what was going on. It was intended to make you uncomfortable. You were squirming in your seats and you were trying to look away, but looking away was not the point. You had to look at it. You had to see the terrible thing going on to realize, man, this is a terrible thing that happened in history. We definitely should never repeat that ever, 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 ever. Now, if somebody was watching this thing going, man, this is awesome, I'm popcorn, oh, this looks good, oh, look at that, they burned that guy, and maybe something might be wrong with him, but the general idea was to make you feel uncomfortable. So maybe the purpose of this movie was to make you feel uncomfortable, the shock value, intended to shock people. It was very cheap. It looked cheap, it sounds cheap, it sounds like it was recorded off like this is the late 70s era. The video camera age, where people could like film their own movies, cheap looking movies. They get these little VHS tape cameras, these big giant little things, and they could film their own scenes. They did adult movies, they did all sorts of crazy stuff in the 70s without any big network or company paying for it. They self-funded it, and they looked cheap, they sounded cheap, they filmed their own like band demo footages on these cameras, and they looked cheap, they sounded cheap, tons of tracking issues and audio glitches and pops, but it was raw. It was like this small time thing, and it fit the time that this film came out fits that era of this type of small budget filmmaking. And there was a lot of films like this that were coming out around this time. I haven't seen too many of them, but I know about quite a few 70s films in this time period. So this definitely fits in that mold of this is a movie that big studios wouldn't make, so let's just make something that stands out, that looks unique. Even if it's a very, very, very niche thing that will probably never, ever blow up, it's still something that's going to stand out to say, hey, we probably are the first of our kind. Tons of people are going to copy us, probably be a lot more edgier than us, but you'll look back to us and say, it all started here. And that says something, that's interesting. That is a creative idea. That is something that I can respect, even if it's not a genre of film that I would ever go back to watching. It's not something I'm very interested in. I'm not a documentary guy. Like, I even had to, strain myself to pay attention to This Is Spinal Tap. And a lot of people love that movie, and I'm okay with it. It's just not the type of shtick that I'm as interested in. Even though Spinal Tap actually has a chronological series of events, it has a narrative, so as to say. So you go from point A of the film to point B, ending the film, and you actually have a narrative that connects the events. The only connecting event, the connecting theme in all of the events in this film is death or dying in some way, shape, or form. It doesn't have to be a human dying, it could be an animal dying. It's just some form of death, and it's completely random. It's very random. There's no organization. It's very disjointed. It's very disjointed, and I didn't really like that. I don't like disjointedness. You need some sort of organization to how you're going to do these things. If you're going to show the Faces of Death, let's have it all be about war scenes. So this whole film, this whole episode of Faces of Death is all about war. So we're going to have various things relating to war. Maybe this next one's all about crime. So we're going to have all sorts of things related to crime. Maybe this next one's about medicine and medical procedures. So we're going to show all about medicines and medical procedures. Next one's about animal cruelty. We're going to show animal. If you have it in various sorts of organization and genres that you can look through and keep organized, that's less disjointing. That's less problematic for keeping my attention. It's just so random that I'm thinking about the previous scene that you move readily to some shrunken head somewhere, and I'm like, well, but I was thinking about the other thing. Now we're at shrunken heads. Oh, now we're at these cults over here. Oh, now it's a car crash. It's way too disjointed. It needs some organization. But I don't know. I don't get it. I definitely didn't get it. But because I don't get it, I don't feel right trashing the film. I can't trash the film if I don't get it. I can get a movie like a bad rom-com. I could get that. I get that, like Jack and Jill. I can get that type of movie. I can get how that thing has a bloated budget, and yet none of that money is put under the screen, so it could have been some sort of, body laundering scheme or some joke like that, allegedly. Joke like that. I can get those types of jokes. I can get that type of movie and not enjoy that type of movie and would feel fine trashing that type of movie. I don't get this movie. It's not for me. I'm not the target audience. I don't have a fascination with this stuff. You know how when you're driving down on the highway or something and you see some big car crash, there's no cops to slow you down, but everybody's already slowing down. Everybody's slowing down to a halt so they can go and look, so they can go and see, because they're all so nosy and curious about what's going on the side of the road. What's that? Who's that? Is somebody on the ground? Oh, so I see some red there. What is that? And me, I'm just driving by. I don't care. And that's basically that's basically my thoughts on Faces of Death. If that disappoints fans of this movie, I'm sorry. I just didn't. It's not my thing. So that's all you get here. Let's move on to something else next time.